Hello, boys and girls. Thanks for joining with me in Jotham's journey to the first Christmas. We're in Advent week 4 and part 5 now. Jotham began to tremble. He felt like he was about to throw up. How could he have been so stupid? He had walked into this trap all on his own, and now he was caught here like a rabbit in the snare. He knew if he told them his father's name, they would search him out. If his father had already paid his taxes, they'd whip him for not including Jotham in the count of his family. Jotham was quite sure they wouldn't care that his father had no way of knowing that he was alive. "Your father's name, boy!" the milky white man screamed, no longer smiling. The man's scream was so high he sounded like an animal that was being slaughtered, and it scared Jotham so that his legs felt like limp ropes. He could see no escape from these Romans. They were as big as bears with hands as strong as jackals' jaws. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Suddenly, Jotham felt one of those jackal-like hands clamp onto the back of his neck. "The procurator asked you a question, boy!" the soldier roared. Jotham felt tears beginning to form behind his eyes, and he wanted to scream. He felt just as hopeless as when he was being auctioned off in front of the whole town back in En-Gedi. That's it. En-Gedi. Nathan. Suddenly a plan flashed in front of Jotham's eyes, and he saw a bit of hope. A wave of fear swept up through his insides at the thought of what would happen if it didn't work, but he knew it was his only chance. He swallowed hard 3 times and smacked his lips together. Then, wrinkling his face into a most pitiful look, he stared the milky white man right in the eye. "Please, sir," he said, his best pleading voice, "do you happen to have a cup of water for a poor leper boy?" All the fear in Palestine spread across the man's face, and he stumbled backwards. The soldier that had clamped his hand around Jotham's neck instantly let go and started yelling and waving his hand through the air. All the other soldiers backed away with a look of fear and disgust, and the 3 men at the table almost fell over themselves trying to move away. "Leper!" someone shouted, and suddenly everybody was shouting nearby. The ring of soldiers broke apart, and Jotham saw his chance. Without even thinking about it, he ran through the hole in the ring of people, expecting another hand to clamp around his neck any second. But the fear of leprosy's slow death kept everyone away from him, and as Jotham ran, the crowd parted like Moses parting the Red Sea. "Come back here, you boy!" the milky white man screamed. Jotham looked back only once and saw no one was following him, but even so he didn't slow down as he ran through the narrow winding streets. He'd outrun the cries of leper now, and the crowds of people thought him just a rude little boy. He was running so fast and thinking so hard he didn't even notice the donkey Eliakim had given him tied up to a post. Nor did he notice the fat, black-toothed woman that Decca had called Mother coming out from a shop. Finally, panting so hard that he thought his lungs would explode, Jotham reached the Inn of Hazra. He ran inside and slammed the door behind him, leaning against it as if it could keep out the entire Roman legion by himself. "You did not see your family?" Hazra asked, looking up from where he was repairing a table. Jotham shook his head no. "Well, perhaps tomorrow," Hazra said, returning to his work. "I do not know this Anna you spoke of, but Simeon seems to abide by what she says. Maybe tomorrow I will go with you and speak to the Roman procurator. He could look on his list and see if your father has already been here to pay taxes." "No!" Jotham yelled and shook his head, hard. Hazra looked at him strangely, but didn't pursue the matter since the inn was full of curious eyes. Jotham helped Hazra and his plump little wife feed lamb stew to the many travelers at the inn that night. Every room was full of people, and Jotham wondered where they would all sleep. But after the meal was finished, he watched as they laid sleeping mats all over the floor, from wall to wall. Hazra brought a mat for Jotham and laid it in the corner of the main room, between a man who smelled bad and the cool, rough plaster of a wall. "Before you go to sleep," Hazra said, "tell me why you cried out at my suggestion to talk to the procurator." Now Jotham explained his afternoon adventure to Hazra, and Hazra laughed heartily and said that perhaps they shouldn't go see the Roman procurator after all. He had promised to help Jotham look the next day, and that made Jotham feel a little better. As he lay down on his mat and covered himself with his scratchy little blanket, he felt as if he was so close to finding his father that he could almost reach out and touch him. Perhaps Hazar was right, Jotham thought. Perhaps tomorrow he would find his family. Jotham yawned and pulled his blanket more tightly around his shoulders. It had been a very long day, and it took him only a few seconds to fall asleep. Jotham is so excited at being so close to finding his family. Maybe you're excited too, at how close we are to Christmas. It's been a long wait. What do you think Jotham has learned from his journey? What have you discovered in the last few weeks?